What's good, Commanders fans? I just saw a lot of some funny news that the Eagles are interviewing Ron Rivera for their defensive coordinator position per Jeremy Fowler and a bunch of people. So that just made me laugh so much. Like, I really hope they hire him. Like, I would be so happy. Like, that would just be almost like a Christmas gift if the Eagles hired Riverboat Ron, and Ron just brings in David Mayo and some of his slow Commanders players with him, and some of the other guys that he loves at the linebacker position, and just Ron getting cooked. Putting safeties on speedy wide receivers like we did against Tyreek Hill, just giving up big plays, giving up big yards, like he was when he was the defensive coordinator the last couple of weeks of the season. So I would love it. I would love it. Just the positional flex he would bring to the Eagles, the Buffalo nickel package, the Buffalo nickel he would bring to the Eagles as well. I would just love everything if they hired Ron Rivera, man. That would just be hilarious, man. That would be hilarious. I would love that with a passion, man. Ron saying, guys, when they're out there getting cooked. And the Eagles defense is really bad, man. They had like James Bradbury. You saw how he was tackling? I don't know if he's going to be on there next year, but James Bradbury, he was with Ron with the Panthers too. So he'd probably keep James Bradbury. I would love if he kept James Bradbury on that roster too on his defense. It's not up to him. It's up to Howie Roseman. But I would love that, man. I would love for Ron to run that defense, man. I would love it. I would love it. The Eagles defense is already bad, but they would be probably the worst defense in the league, kind of like how we were towards the end of the season for sure. Now, they said the last time Ron Rivera was a defense coordinator, his 2010 Chargers led the league in total defense. Now, that is true, but look, that's 13 years ago. 14 years ago now? That's not the past. That's living in the past. Remember, he was a great coach with the Panthers, but that was so long ago. Ron just lives in the past. He wants everything to be that Panthers way, and that's what he wanted to. That's how he wanted it to be here in Washington. But you just can't bring in, and that's the offensive side of the ball. You can't bring in Norwell, Trey Turner, and all these old Panthers guys and Thomas Davis and think that you're gonna win like you did when you had Cam Newton when you went 15-1. It just doesn't work like that. Now, him as a defensive coordinator, who knows? Maybe he might be a good defensive coordinator. I highly doubt that, especially being with the Eagles and just how terrible they are right now. But I do. I think they're gonna hire him as a DC. I hope they do. I don't think they will, but I really, really hope they do, because if they hire him, that would signal to me the end of an era for the Eagles. That era that they had where they made the Super Bowl last year, and they had a good record this year. And Nick Sirianni, like they're talking about Nick Sirianni possibly, he's not going to be fired this year, but if he has Ron Rivera as a defensive coordinator, I think next year they definitely will go downhill for sure, and he will be fired. He will be fired for sure if he hires Ron as their defensive coordinator for sure. So that's pretty hilarious to me. And then also, I do kind of want to talk about the the weekend as well. Just kind of how the coaches did that we're interviewing and that we're looking for. Ben Johnson, they won. He did a great job. You see the Jahmyr Gibbs run for like 50 yards for a touchdown against Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay has a darn good run defense. The touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sam Laporta had a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. No, I'm sorry, not Sam Laporta. Josh Reynolds had a touchdown. And then the fourth and run where they had a gutsy call by Dan Campbell. Ran that in for a touchdown too. So I thought I thought he called a great game against a solid Tampa Bay defense. Their pass defense is bad, but their run defense is usually really, really good with Todd Bowles. And I thought Ben Johnson had a good game plan and did a good job. You look at Mike McDonald with the Ravens. Of course, they dominated the Texans. Steven Sims Jr. out of nowhere gets a touchdown, punt return, touchdown out of nowhere. Other than that, C.J. Stroud just couldn't get going. The Ravens defense, they shut down Devin Singletary. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that bad pick on Prize Picks. I picked Devin Singletary to go over because the Ravens defense in the regular season, they gave a bunch of rushing yards, but they shut him down, and they just dominated, man. And Lamar Jackson did his thing. So 2 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 100 yards on the ground. But Mike McDonald did a great job once again, out coaching Bobby Slowick. And I really like Bobby Slowick as a candidate. I really do. I like how he coached up a young rookie in C.J. Stroud to lead a team to a playoff victory. Not just in the playoffs, but to win in the playoffs. And actually, scheme guys, Dalton Schultz was wide open for a touchdown against the Browns. Like C.J. Stroud looked really, really good. Made some good plays, some good passes. Devin Singletary ran for a touchdown against the Browns too. So Bobby Slowick, man, that game just because he got blown up by the Ravens. The Ravens have blown out a lot of teams. That doesn't drop his stock or my preference in Bobby Slowick at all. But all right, let's get to the report by Justina Anderson. I'm trying to think who else was in there. Bills, Chiefs, no candidates from them. Niners, Packers, no candidates from them. So really both games, the Texans and the Texans, Ravens, and then the Lions and Buccaneers. Ben Johnson, Slowick, Mike McDonald. Those were the three games or two games, a couple of games that we were looking at, where I was looking at for sure. Very, very locked in on how those guys coach those games up. All right, let's talk about Eric Bieniemy here. Now, the Eagles, they might have to fool around and fire Brian Johnson, their offensive coordinator. He did not do a good job this year. He had like a record set for calling a bunch of screen passes for negative yards. He like set a record for that. Bieniemy, if they fire Brian Johnson and they hire Bieniemy somehow, which I highly doubt, I would love if the Eagles did that too. I would love it. I would love if they hired Eric Bieniemy as the offensive coordinator and Ron Rivera as the defensive coordinator. That would just be a happy day for me. That would be awesome. That would be hilarious if they hire those two guys. Highly unlikely they do. Now, this is from Jacina Anderson. She reported that the Commanders interviewed Eric Bieniemy for the head coaching vacancy last week. Now, it is kind of funny and fishy. Like every this was like kind of like the sneaky announcement. Like nobody else reported this until her. And apparently he got interviewed last week. All the Ben Johnson interviews, like the virtual interview, was like announced before. He got interviewed. Dan Quinn, he has an in-person interview coming up. Like every other candidate, Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, his was announced before he interviewed. Everybody else was announced like kind of out in the open. And then Eric Bieniemy's is announced kind of like a leftover, like a throwaway interview, honestly. And I'm not going to, it's definitely not the Rooney rule because he doesn't account for the Rooney rule because he's an in-house guy. He was already with the team, so that doesn't count to any type of Rooney rules or whatever. That wouldn't count towards that. But it is kind of odd that happened. And you got to think about this. Eric Bieniemy has not gotten any calls for any other interviews. I haven't seen the Chargers or the Patriots already hired their guy. The Raiders already got Antonio Pierce, but all the other, like the Falcons, the Seahawks, all the other teams that are looking for head coaching vacancies, nobody has been like, oh, we've interviewed Eric Bieniemy. No, nobody else. The Panthers, nobody else has been calling for Eric Bieniemy's services. And that kind of tells you like how they thought about how his season went. Because if his season would have went well, if he would have did a good job, clearly he would have been getting phone calls. But he has not. And even before this, when he was with the Chiefs, he was still getting phone calls. Like I feel like he got more interviews last year for head coach vacancies or the years before than what he is this year. So this definitely, his year here definitely did some damage to his stock for sure and his reputation a little bit, which is unfortunate. You know, the whole article about the players not endorsing Eric Bieniemy, some of the coaches not liking that Eric Bieniemy practice is too long. Even and not just the players that were complaining, but even the coaches in that article were like, "Oh, the practice hours are too long. It's cutting into the training time and stuff like that." So there's a lot going on with that in the story. So you look at just the raw numbers. He had a worse year than Scott Turner. Scott Turner was 20th in yards per game, 18, and then Scott Turner was 24th in points per game. Eric Bieniemy regressed to 24th in yards a game and then 25th to points a game. Didn't drop off too much, not a substantial drop off, but still, just if you're worse than Scott Turner, it's just like you were brought in here to be better than Scott Turner, to instill some life, some energy, some attention to detail and stuff like that. Just getting the best out of Terry McLaurin, getting the best out of Jahan Dotson. He didn't do that. Both those guys regressed under Eric Bieniemy. Now, it could have been quarterback play. Sam Howell missing guys here and there. Sam Howell and Terry, they just didn't connect like I really thought they should have. And when Jacoby came in, you saw Terry getting the ball down the field, contested catches, those things happen. But with Eric Bieniemy, just too many shotgun runs, dropping Sam back way too much. He basically turned Sam Howell into Patrick Ramsey, dropping him back 50 to 40 times a game, getting out coached by Wink Martindale. Just all the shotgun runs, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Against Dallas, you do a 3rd and 1 deep pass, and then 4th and 1, you do a shotgun run. Of course it gets stuffed. Just ridiculous play calling by Eric Bieniemy. He's a running back. He was a former running back in college, former running back in the NFL. And it's a guy that just basically didn't really believe in the run game. And that was really disturbing to me and disappointing. Got out coached by Wink Martindale. Terry McLaurin complaining, saying he was running cardio. Then he said the things against the Giants game in the press conference after the game. Players said that Eric Bieniemy had too much power. Players won't endorse him. All that stuff. I mean, no interview requests anywhere else. And, it's just a lot of things that, that just were really, really disappointing with Eric Bieniemy for sure. So, Eric Bieniemy, I highly doubt that he will get the job here, as he should not. Players won't endorse him. A lot of players that are not endorsing him anyway, they won't be here next year. But still, I highly doubt Terry McLaurin is one of those guys endorsing and banging on the door for Eric Bieniemy to be hired as the head coach. So, I think, honestly, he's just better suited for a veteran quarterback. You saw he did better with Jacoby Brissett. A young guy that's developing, I don't think he's better suited for a kind of quarterback like that. You're going to drop the guy back so many times. I did want to see what Jacoby would do with his offense because his offense looked better when Jacoby was in there. He started to run the ball a little bit more. But other than that, now he did have a couple good games. He had a good second half against the Broncos. So if he is going on an interview, he can be like, "Hey, look at the second half against the Broncos. Look at both Eagles games." And even though the counter argument for him against the Eagles, or him having 2 good games against the Eagles, is that the Eagles defense is one of the worst defenses in the league, one of the worst pass defenses in the league. The 2 Eagles games, the Patriots game, he had a good game, a good play calling game, and then you can look at the Jets second half and the Rams second half. And what other game did he have like a good game? Broncos second half, 2 Eagles games, Patriots game, second half of Jets, second half of Rams. And then that's really it, man. He really struggled in that Falcons game. Both Giants games, he got outcoached by Wink Martindale. So, yeah, Eric Bieniemy, man, we need a clean house. And he's one of those guys that we definitely should not bring back. I think he would be better suited to be back where he was as an offense coordinator with the Chiefs and be back with Patrick Mahomes. So I think that's where he's going to end up. I think Andy Reid will welcome him back. He won't be the offensive coordinator because of Matt Nagy, and we gave him the associate head coach title. And they tried to Ron tried to hype him up and give him every title that he can get. But Ron kind of did set him up with those comments saying that players were concerned, about the practice style and stuff like that. That was messed up by Ron. But the point is that I would not say Eric Bieniemy here. I think it's a nice thing that Adam Peters gave him a chance and gave him an interview just to listen to him and hear him out since he's already in the building. I think that was a nice gesture by Adam Peters. So. And that's about it there with Eric Bieniemy. I would definitely not even give him an interview. If it was up to me, I wouldn't even give him an interview. There's just no point. All right. And the other news, just the divisional picks. I think I picked the Ravens, so I got that right. I picked the Niners, so I got that right. And then the Chiefs, I think I got that right too. And then the Lions, I think I went 4-0. I think I went 4-0 on that. So, but just look at some of the interviews. Dan Quinn, he has an in-person interview coming up. We could not interview the guys that are currently in some of the games. Raheem Morris, he has an in-person interview coming up yet as well. They're getting second interviews this week, which will be in person. All the other guys, we can't interview those guys just yet. We have to wait until things play out for sure. So as far as like Mike McDonald and Ben Johnson and guys like those 2 guys, we can't interview those guys yet. Let me see what the day is. January 29th. We cannot have second interviews they can't have second interviews with Washington until Monday, January 29th. All right, guys. You guys let me know what you guys think. Hell Commanders. Peace.